It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Welcome in to Take Command. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. It's a Mailbag Monday, Logan. And before we dive in, we're very excited already for our second episode this week. A little bit of housekeeping off the top. Jordan Rodriguez just released a brand new series for The Athletic called The Playcallers. Logan and I have already started listening to it as we're recording this. It's only been out for a couple of hours, but so impressed, so blown away with this series. And we already have an interview on the books with Jordan for Wednesday. So that is going to be super exciting because, Logan, I know Jordan's been doing a lot of press for this series. For those that don't know, this is a kind of a backstory of Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur. From their time even before Washington through the time in Washington and how they've all worked to evolve modern NFL offense. And now their coaching trees take up about a third of the league. But I don't know how many interviews she's done with people who actually played for these guys and specifically played on that 2012 Washington team. So I'm really excited for this on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, me too. And I think just, I just started on probably 30 minutes into the first episode, and just the level of detail, like kind of the historical context, the background of Kyle, like kind of his getting into his mind, like those are the first 30 minutes were really interesting just to kind of give like a little preview, because it like shows you the absolute obsession that those guys have with coaching. And everyone says, oh, I want to be a head coach, but like to be a good head coach, it is like, it's a huge part of your life in a way that is almost unhealthy. And I think she did a really good job of kind of capturing that kind of commitment to detail. So,
yeah. And these guys are pretty unfiltered. Like, I have not heard them do a lot of interviews where they're this forthcoming and honest, which is something I'm going to certainly like almost start with Jordan. Like, how did you get everybody to agree to this? Do they know that you were recording? So it's one of those types of things. So it's really, really cool. And I'm excited to talk to Jordan about it on Wednesday. If you want to listen ahead of time, of course, to the Play Callers, you can do that. You're welcome, The Athletic, for the free plug. But you can go check that out on The Athletic Football's feed. And then we're going to talk to Jordan about it on Wednesday. Today, though, we answer mailbag questions. And this one, actually, Logan, our first ever question from Threads, the new Instagram version of Twitter.
Is that a thing? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Have you missed that?
No, yeah. I just assume that I miss anything related to social media. Like I'm barely hanging on right now. So
that's a good point. This is from Threads. And so I want to get the exact question here.
This is a great question.
Back up. But it's about roster construction. It's super interesting. So J Inky 32 says, roster construction given a blank state for today's NFL, in which positions do you spend a lot on free agents? Where do you build through the draft? And where are you content with just a guy?
Yeah. I mean, this is such a good question, and I'm sure we could do, like probably 2 shows on this, but just, we got a 15-minute segment. So to me, I think when you look at the NFL, and I think when you look at the analytics, where you want to spend the most money is obviously quarterback, right? I know that's kind of like a throwaway thing, right? Quarterback, you want to
kind of, right? Like you want to get the best value.
You want to get the guy there. You want, like, if you can get Patrick Mahomes, right? I know that's like, oh yeah, wait, great insight, Logan. You want to get Patrick Mahomes. Like you want to, like you would be willing for Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, maybe Lamar Jackson's in that tier. I don't know, but those top kind of 5 guys in the league, you'll move heaven and earth to make that happen. That was one of the things with the Deshaun Watson trade, right? Is like they thought they had a top 3 quarterback in the NFL that they could use and kind of elevate the Cleveland Browns roster. Now, obviously, like that's yet to be seen whether that pays off. But in terms of money, resource allocation, roster construction, that's the most important position in all of sports. And you got to get a guy there. Now, to your point, which I think is really astute, it's you got to get a guy who's good. You know what I mean? You got to get a guy who's good for that money. Like if you're looking for a top 5 guy in the league, like you're giving up draft capital, you're giving up money, you're giving up a big portion of the salary cap. It all makes sense, right? And that's not great insight by me. That's just obvious work, right?
Right. So here's what I would say, though, in response to the way the question is asked. Like, where do you want to draft? Where do you want to spend big free agent money? Yeah. Where do you okay with just a guy? I do not want to spend big free agent money at quarterback. Free agent money specifically, right?
I mean, obviously there's there's context there, right? If for whatever reason Patrick Mahomes is a free agent,
100%.
You go for
Patrick
it, right?
Mahomes is never a free agent, and that's kind of like the thing.
That's the point,
why is a guy who's good at the most important position in pro sports available? That's always my question. And like once a decade, you get a Drew Brees situation where he's available because he has a really bad injury,
Yeah.
and that injury caused a very bad season. And that bad season meant that the incumbent team could draft his replacement. And there's enough of an injury risk that they are choosing to go younger. And I say once a decade because that's pretty much when it happens. Once a decade, Drew Brees. Once a decade, Peyton Manning to Denver. They draft Luck. It was Rivers to San Diego at the time. So like if you get that once a decade guy, fine. Other than that, I think the strategy is to just keep drafting guys till you get the guy, because where do you want just a guy? Not at quarterback. You want someone special, and so it's worth to continually kind of do what the Cardinals did, where they drafted Josh Rosen, didn't seem to be the guy. They move on and draft Kyler Murray 1 overall the next year because it was worth it to them for the upside of what Kyler could be.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Like, because I even look at like Russell Wilson. I'm sure when Denver made that trade, they thought, "Oh, we're reliving the exact kind of formula of Peyton Manning. We're going to get him for 2 years. We'll win a Super Bowl." And obviously, he wasn't that guy anymore, right? And we'll see what happens. And I think I want to bring this up just to kind of, just for some context. Like, to me, the most important thing about your team are your coordinators. Like if you have Kyle Shanahan as your OC, you can get away with Derek Carr at quarterback. You can get away with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, right? You can kind of, it insulates that process a little bit more. So if I'm a front office executive, like the head coach is really important, but I want to make sure that head coach is bringing in somebody that can elevate that position, right? So like to your point, I think you bring up a great point. Like in free agency, you're probably not going to get that dude, right? But if I'm Kyle Shanahan, if I'm Sean McVay, if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm okay with not getting the guy because I know that I can win with Brock Purdy. I know that I can win with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Matt LaFleur right now thinks he can win with Jordan Love. Look at Mike McDaniel in Miami. He can win with Tua Tagovailoa, right? And obviously they're very talented guys, like arm talent, quick release, athleticism, but they're definitely not a top 5 quarterback at their position.
Right. Well, what I would say though is part of the genius of those guys is they know what they want. Like Brock Purdy is not some random guy. Like Kyle identified Brock Purdy as, like his S2 score, for instance, was extraordinarily high.
Yeah.
And again, we spent a lot of time in the draft process on S2, but like what that essentially measures is your decision making.
Sure.
And while Brock Purdy lacked some of the physical talent and skills and even production at the college level, there were traits that Kyle looked at and said, this guy's going to learn quickly. He's going to make good decisions. I can put a certain amount on his plate that we can win with. And he went out and executed those things. And between Kyle's ability to insulate and put the correct amount on his plate, and for Purdy's, superior for especially his draft position, mental processing, he made, that's not an accident. It's not like you could put any quarterback as Mr. Irrelevant in last year's draft. Kyle knew what he was getting in Brock, maybe not to that level.
I was going to say,
but like to an extent, that's an intentional choice for that guy to be Brock Purdy.
I was going to say though, like if Kyle was that confident, he takes that guy in the 3rd round, 4th round, right?
Sure.
There's a reason that he's the 7th pick. Like they obviously liked his evaluation. They made him Mr. Irrelevant. They could have drafted literally anybody else that was available. They picked him. They want him on the roster. They want him to be a 49er. So I think that's a very good point. But so to me, I think we've established that like obviously quarterback's the most important position in sports, right?
Yeah.
If you have good coordinators, you can get away with stuff there in terms of developing, insulating, all that kind of stuff. I think we kind of hit on a good point there that you can't bank on the free agent guy because usually while they are very talented, financially they don't make a lot of sense for your roster, right? Because it really inhibits. That's where like that inflection point, like on PFF they call it the Matt Ryan inflection point, or the Kirk Cousins inflection point, where the guy is good, but he's not good enough to take any roster and elevate it the way a Peyton Manning or the way a Tom Brady, the way, Joe Burrow to a certain extent, Patrick Mahomes can elevate that roster and kind of take you from okay to in contention every single year. So I think that's a really good point by you in terms of free agency. So, the question is, how do you get there? And I think you alluded to it really nicely. It's you draft, and you keep drafting until you get a guy. And so that's why, to me, like there's a couple analytics guys who've proposed this hypothesis that you should literally take a quarterback every single year in the first 3 rounds. just to kind of make sure that you are giving yourself the best opportunity to find somebody, just because the return on that investment is so high. Now, I would kind of slightly disagree with that, because I think you're going to end up with like a lot of talented guys that don't play and that are really big value for other teams. But I think that principle, I think, comes across really nicely in terms of the value in terms of the NFL, is really closely tied to the quarterback position. Now, kind of leading into the next part of this is like, if you can't get the guy, where do you invest most of your money and how do you allocate those resources?
I was going to say, so what is the position, or are the positions where you actually would spend in free agency?
Yeah, so I think for me it's receiver. Receiver is really high in terms of free agency, and people say, oh well, like, why not DB, for example? To me, receiver is a skill set like from high school, college, NFL. Like, I'm a high school football coach now. It translates. You can see it in another offense. You can see it in a different scheme and say that guy does X, Y, Z really well. We can magnify that here. Like, it's not like with a DB where it's like, oh, they play predominantly man or they're used to these kind of rules. There's not like this drastic adjustment. Like, literally, receiver outside of defensive end might be the easiest position on the field to learn, because now there is a little bit of nuance to it. I'm not saying it's like anybody can go out and do it, but
Right.
like, it's a line on a paper and you have to closely resemble that route and be in timing with the quarterback, right? And you have to be able to win versus man-to-man coverage. So in terms of guidelines, it's very, very specific, and everyone does the same stuff around the league. Like, the verbiage, the terminology might be different, but I'm willing to invest there because I know the transfer is very, very high, unlike some other positions. And like DB, for example, like DB, everyone, like, all these analytics guys are saying DB should be more valuable in the draft. You should be willing to take them as a top 5 pick. All these things, you should be willing to spend free agent money there. I balk at that a little bit because the DB evaluation is so convoluted. You don't really know the guy until you're like with them in your defense, and I think that's
Right.
one of the reasons why, like, Forbes was so valuable to this team and maybe not valued the same way around the NFL, because he plays cover 3 match. He plays quarters. He does stuff that they have seen, and the transfer rate is so high for this defense. So that's why I would kind of balk at defensive back. And then the next position for me is probably defensive line, because defensive linemen transfer incredibly well. They transfer from college really well. There's like very solid analytic metrics that support their transfer. So what I mean by that is, you look at their PFF run grade production and their PFF pass rush production, and you measure that with their athletic profile, and you basically can just add those up. The people with the highest sums there are the best defensive linemen in the NFL. Like, it's pretty straightforward. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh my gosh, like, can they do this? It's like,
it's not a huge decision-making position.
correct. Yes. It's like, are you a freak? Have you been productive? Yes and yes.
Yeah.
You're going to be a good pro.
To borrow from John Allen, can you line up and whip the guy's ass in front of you?
I love that, because that's exactly what it is, right? And so when I see a guy on a different team do it, and I say to myself, he can probably do it here, as long as the scheme is relatively similar. Like, to be kind of nerdy football specific here, like, I don't want to draft a guy who's a good 3 tech and have him play 4-eye, which is kind of what they did with John and Duran here for a long time. They were a little bit out of position. And then you see how, like, when I maximize their position in the defense, Duran gets to play more 3, John gets to play more 3, get more one-on-one matchups, how it just explodes their production. So I think there's a little bit of scheme, and that's where the coordinators come in. But in terms of guys that transfer super well, that are really easy evaluations, receivers, D-line, and I know there's some scouts out there that probably listen to this that are like, receivers aren't easy evaluations. Like, it's easier to say like, yes, he can, or no, he can't. There are different flavors of receiver, but that binary yes, no is a little bit easier, I think.
And I think especially once they've already been in the NFL, right? Like, it's one thing coming out of college, but if you've done it in the NFL, like, I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be bad somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, DeAndre Hopkins went from Houston to Arizona and was still awesome.
Right.
Like, Randy Moss, when he went back to New England and decided he was going to try again, was the same guy that he was in Minnesota. Like,
right.
So as long as there's not other factors, the skill set doesn't really wear down. It's just a matter of, can you do it at the NFL level? Yes. Okay. Well, then you can do it at the NFL level, as opposed to DB. Like, William Jackson III was really good in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
He was awful here.
Yeah.
And so that DB skill set does not translate the same way. It is far more scheme dependent in what you're actually asking that player to do. Quarterback, obviously similar. And as we talked about, good quarterbacks don't become available unless there's some
Right.
major kind of risk. Running back, by the time you become a free agent, age is already a factor,
Right.
unfortunately for them. The other one I think that's interesting is O-line,
Yeah.
because I tend to think that O-line translates pretty well, maybe not as well as the other two, but like if you're a good offensive lineman, you're probably going to be a good offensive lineman no matter where you go.
Yeah, O line's tricky, man. It's becoming harder and harder to evaluate college O linemen just because schematically they're doing stuff that's so different from most of what the league is doing and the expectations, right? So I think like there's a PFF just did a study with offensive linemen how there's like this 3rd year bump for offensive linemen, like they kind of are okay, and then by the 3rd year they kind of explode in terms of their efficiency and production. And to me, that's just like you're getting more information for your CPU. Like you
Yeah.
see more fronts, you see more speeds, you see more rushers, you see more linebacker blitzes, you see more coverage rotations, and you're just like, oh, okay, like I've got it now. Like I'm getting more and more comfortable. And so I think, offensive linemen in free agency become very valuable, especially if you're asking them to do something similar, because they're just getting smarter. It's like I always say offensive linemen are like martial artists, and like it's like the Bruce Lee thing. It's like the guy that masters 1,000 kicks knows nothing, but the guy that masters 1,000 kicks one time is like a genius or whatever the heck the expression is. It's like
Yeah.
it's that way with O linemen. Really, it's like just the more time they get on task, the better they are. And I think this is a total tangent, so sorry to the question, but I think that's one of the biggest things with the current offseason structure that hurts that position more than any other position. Because if I'm a receiver, I can
Mm.
go out and run routes. If I'm a defensive lineman, I can go run pass rush drills. With an O lineman, there's something very specific and tactile about getting your hands on somebody working combinations. So I think that's an extremely valuable position. I'm going to invest there. I think I'm going to invest there because there's an element of safety there too. You bring in a bad tackle in the draft, you can play guard, you can play center, you can move that piece around and make sure that works. But I think recently it's become harder to evaluate that position group just because college offenses and college defenses are not NFL defenses and are not NFL offenses, and it makes that evaluation slightly more challenging. So, but in terms of hierarchy, that's where I'd go: quarterback, probably receiver, defensive line, depending on kind of 1A, 1B there, offensive line for sure. But it's harder the evaluation. And then in terms of like what you said, I think running back is basically like there's a million of them.
Right. Well,
Like
that gets to the last part of the question, right? Like, which positions are you okay with just a guy? And I feel like it's running back and linebacker. Now, just a guy is, relative, right? You want an average NFL player there. But if you have an average NFL player there versus if you have an average quarterback or an average pass
yeah.
rusher, like the impact on your team is not going to be as significant, in part because those two positions are heavily reliant on the lines in front of them, offensive and defensive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think just look at the draft. Like look at Brian Robinson, look at Antonio Gibson, look at what they've done. Like they're 3rd round picks. It's not like we had to waste all this draft capital with a guy in the 1st round. It's like no, they're good NFL pros. Look at Jonathan Williams. Like he's a 5th round pick from Arkansas or whatever he is, maybe even undrafted. Like he's a good football player at the running back position. And I think it's like supply and demand. There's a huge overage in supply, and it's leading to less demand. And so it's not like you can't find, it's not like they're bad football players. It's just there's a lot of them that play running back. And so it's
Right.
like, why do I need to invest? Like, why do I need to invest basically? So that's to me, like, that's not a knock on linebacker or on running back, excuse me. But I think it's the nature of the position and the direction that it's
Yeah,
going.
the level of player for just a guy is pretty high at running back. Like
Yeah.
just a guy running back can average 4.3 a carry.
Yeah. 100%.
Just a guy quarterback is going to average 180 yards a game and lose you a bunch of
Lose you a bunch
football
of
games.
games. Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
4.3 a carry running back guy is going to help you win. So
Yeah.
that's nice. Sorry,
Yeah.
running backs, but you're
And
just
then
guys, and that's okay.
I guess the other one is linebacker. Like, and linebacker, just because like we've seen with this team, like it's just not a very valuable position. I
They
want
don't play
guys who
much.
can, I
Yeah.
want guys who can cover better. I want guys, if I need to rush the passer, I want defensive linemen on my roster. It's just a weird position because we've talked about it, on a million podcasts, but it's hard to the evaluation is terribly hard. The amount of information they have to digest is incredibly high. So it's not. I could get the best linebacker of all time there, like Luke Kuechly, for example, and that makes your defense way better. I just think it's so hard to find that guy, and then the return on investment is not that high. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Right.
like it's
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, how do you? This is like optimal, if you will, but optimal would be finding a Hall of Famer at every position. Luke Kuechly
yeah,
makes your
100%.
defense completely different. By the same token, Derrick Henry has carried the Titans to how many wins over the last couple of years?
Right.
So, like, it's not like a great Hall of Fame level running back cannot change your entire complexity of your team in a positive way, that you just like should automatically punt on just a guy, which was kind of the Bijan thing. Like, I love the Bijan pick for Atlanta because if he's that good and they run the ball that much, he's going to help them win a ton of football games. But generally speaking, you can get away with just a guy at that position more. And you don't need to spend a bunch of draft capital or a bunch of free agent money on it. All right, let's wrap it up. One word answer. I'm going to go through all basically every position. I want draft, free agent, just a guy.
Okay.
Quarterback, draft.
Yeah.
Running back.
Just a guy. Need a guy with a pulse.
Draft can also be like a fourth round pick later, right?
Okay.
So like investing high premium draft capital, spending a lot of money in free agency, or just a guy is either spending low money or late draft pick in terms of how you acquire them. So quarterback, draft, running back, just a guy, wide receiver. I'm
gonna big money. That's big value for me. So I'm willing to be a high draft pick. Right. Big free agency money. I need a guy who's going to make some plays for me there. And again, like Terry is a good example. You can find those guys later. The receiver market's kind of going that way in the draft.
And you pay them when they get to their point.
Yeah, right.
Tight end.
Tight end, if it depends on the skill set, obviously. If you got like a Kyle Pitts, like I'm okay with you take. He's like he's a bucket breaker. He's a blue chip guy, right? I would take him very high, but I would say, like this last year's draft is a really good example. Like if Washington really wanted a tight end, they could have probably picked a guy in the second or third round and been okay. Yeah. And I think just premium tight end value, like those first round tight ends, they don't bring the value. It's the same thing with free agency. It's like, it's got to be, there's a reason Darren Waller was traded. And I love Darren Waller. I've said that a million times on the show. Like there's a reason he was traded. It's just the position and the transfer isn't always what you want.
Right. By the way, I was going to let you talk about tight ends because we didn't yet, but you're really crushing this one word thing. Tackles.
Tackles, I'm a big tackle guy, so I want good value there. Like I want good value.
Guard.
Well, I'm less fired up about guards. People know that who've listened to this podcast.
Just a guy.
Center. A guy, yeah. Center. I'm kind of just a guy at center. I know that, and he needs someone got after our last podcast, someone messaged me on Instagram. Was like, "Well, you think he's just a guy? Like, what's going on there?" I forgot who it was. I'm sorry, but honestly, as long as he can snap the ball effectively and get to his landmark on the run game. If you can do that, I'm fine. I don't need a Hall of Fame center on my team.
You don't need Jason Kelce, although having Jason Kelce
is great. Yeah. If we're getting wish list, I want Jason Kelce or Creed Humphrey.
Yeah, defensive tackle,
high value there. I'm looking for first round big free agent guy. Yeah,
defensive end,
same thing.
Linebacker.
I draft a guy, but low round guy, someone that with high athletic traits, high athletic upside.
Corner.
I want a good corner, and
specifically draft though, because
I think so.
Unless you have a free agent who is playing the same scheme. If you're a defensive coordinator, you just hired him from another place, and you're going to bring the guy with you, sure. But other than that, probably draft.
Yeah, I would say draft because then you want to build them in your system in your language. So I would say
Safety.
Watching Cam Curl, I did a breakdown of Cam Curl a couple weeks ago. Watching him, I'm a little bit higher on that, but he's a special case. He's a guy that's super smart. He's big. He's athletic, and again, he was a 7th round pick. So
I like safety in the draft because it's another one like corner that doesn't necessarily translate. Like Jamal Adams, part of that's injury, but Jamal Adams in Seattle has not been the same dude. Earl Thomas, when he started to bounce around, not the same dude. And some of that was the end of their careers. Like Jamal was not. Jamal was arguably the best defensive player in football that won the last year with the Jets, and then has barely played and hasn't played well when he's been in Seattle. Punter, kicker, long snapper. You whatever. You got to have good ones, but you don't have to spend a lot of resources, which is nice.
Yeah, unless it's who's the guy in Baltimore?
Justin Tucker.
Yeah, unless it's Justin Tucker, then
Sebastian Janikowski.
somebody like that. Yeah,
first round pick, but actually wound up being a good one because he was awesome for 20 years.
Yeah,
sure, fine, okay, you convinced me. Kicker in the first round. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. That is Logan Paulson. All right, Logan, a little bit faster pace to these questions. We're going to have to go through our offensive line section here. I got a couple of offensive line adjacent questions.
Yeah.
The first one is quarterback / offensive line. I'm just going to read the question, and then we can parse it out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Quote unquote, why are we risking Sam Howell behind this O-line?
End quote. That's
End
it.
Quote.
To me, yes. Like I'm trying.
I just think this is a silly premise to the question.
It's a silly premise too. I think it's silly, but what I'm saying is I'm trying to assume that the question asker is saying like you're risking his development, and I think if you've been watching the team, if you've been following Ron, like they need a guy out there who can play. They think it's this guy, right? And so, like they want guys to win football games. They think Sam's got the best upside of doing that. It allows them to build a good roster around him. And quite frankly, they feel more confident in this offensive line than I think we do. And I think, the more I think about it, I'm higher on the O-line. I'm warming to them. But
dangerous thing.
There's
we did that last year on some stuff. I'm just telling you.
But to me, it's not a risk. It's like he's a 5th round pick.
Right.
He's got to play. He's a 2nd-year player. Like he's on the roster for a reason. You think he gives you the best chance to win? I mean, do you see it differently than that? I mean, that's
no. Because on September, whatever the hell date is, there's a football game, and they got to put someone out there, and he's the best guy they got. Or he won't be, and then Jacoby will be out there.
It's like were they risking Tom Brady when he was behind like one of the worst O lines in football? No, it's like he's gonna play. He's your best.
What are we risking? Football players play football, and that's not to take away the humanity of like the injury risk that exists on every snap for every single player. Like, but that's part of what you sign up for. Like you knew that when you played. Yeah. Every guy that I've ever talked to, like they understand that what it is. I remember I've told this story before, but it's a 2-sentence story. Like I remember talking to Trent one year when he got to camp, and I was like, "How you doing?" And he's like, "This is the best I'm going to feel all year." And I'm like, oh, cool. It's day 1 of camp. You haven't started yet. That's really depressing. Best you'll feel for 8 months.
And I guess
that's what it is.
But like risking his development maybe is the way they're going. And to me, it's like it's not even. It is a risk, but it's a 5th round draft pick. He's a 5th round draft pick. Like the risk is very low. And so that sounds a little bit callous, but like that's the NFL, man. Like he's there because he wants to start. He's going to start. Is this a less than ideal situation? Yes. Are 90% of the jobs in the NFL less than ideal? Absolutely. Like offensive lines.
Like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
For him to get traded to the Eagles and be able to play behind them?
Yeah. Like it's not going to happen. Like it's just like he's got to play. And we're going to talk about this more later. Like he's got a new OC, new terminology, offensive line. It doesn't have like a bunch of big names. Like, but you got to play, and like this is the time. So it is kind of a funny question. The development, but that's like you've seen it. You've covered the team for a long time. Like you can't always wait for people to develop.
I'm also a little bit of a sink or swim guy. Not that there aren't situations like what happened to David Carr in Houston was ridiculous.
It was terrible. Yeah.
Like that dude got laid out behind a bad O-line and never had a chance, and like that wasn't fair. He was playing in like a borderline unprofessional situation.
Yeah.
However, I think beyond that kind of circumstance, the good ones are going to figure it out. Like you're going to have a game in December in a year where your team is good, that 3 linemen are hurt, and you're going to have to figure out how to play. So if that's Tom Brady back there, like people, and if they lose, people are going to be like, what happened to Brady? And it's like, well, he had 3 of his own linemen out. It's like, I don't know, he's Tom Brady. Like that's what it takes to win in the NFL. So is there always a line of development where you're better prepared perhaps later after some experience? Absolutely. But generally speaking, either Sam's going to be good because he was going to be good, or he's going to be bad because he was never going to be good. And, all we're doing is figuring it out sooner rather than later. And this idea of what he could be gets crushed for some people because he stinks. Well, that's probably because it wasn't what you thought he was going to be, or he turns out to be that, and that's great. And faster, and he wasn't, we're not 5 years down the line going, why hasn't this guy been playing the last 3
Yeah.
years?
Yeah. And I think it just goes back kind of to just, lay another serving of whatever we're talking about. It's just like if he's the best guy on your roster, he's the second year player, he's got to play. Like
Yeah.
it's unfair to the staff. It's unfair to the
So why are you
players.
willing to sacrifice Jacoby?
Well, like I'm just like that's what I'm saying. It's like it's if Jacoby's better, he should play. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
if that's your best guy, play.
Right.
And again, is it going to be perfect? No, but like there's so many times, like Rex Grossman, for example, he said this to me. He's like, you know, nobody cares. Nobody cares about the situation. It's like he had this thing in Chicago, didn't go well. He lost a starting job. He's like, it took me, I think it was like 8 years to get back to the starting position. And was his situation when he got back ideal? No, that team was not very good. I was on the team. Like it wasn't the best team of all time. But like he grabbed that with two hands and was like, we got to make this work because this is the last opportunity I'm going to get. And I think that's what fans need to understand. It's like you don't get a lot of bites at this apple, and it's not always going to be a perfect, pristine, fresh apple off the shelf. Sometimes it's got a little brown on it, and you're going to take it because you're hungry and you want to eat it. So I think that's kind of how I feel about this opportunity.
Right. Next question along these lines too, the offensive line. We've talked about this a lot, so we can move pretty quickly through this.
Yeah.
But like, how can Eric Bieniemy help the offensive line? What creative things can he do to quote unquote protect this O line from its own averageness, mediocrity, or badness, depending on who you ask?
Well, I think that's the thing is like a lot of O lines in the league are like average. And I think
Yeah.
you're looking for an average O line. You're not looking for Philly's a great example. Like they're the best O line in football. They hit on some guys you didn't expect to hit on. They became really good. Most of the O lines that you play with have to be insulated from drop back passing. So how do you do that? Chip help, play action, screen game, RPO, misdirection, keepers. And this offense in Kansas City has a lot of shades of that. So I think this is going to be a situation where we're a little bit worried about the O-line. I got a conversation with a coach today, and it was just like, man, this is going to be so much better for that group because we're not drop back passing every single play. And that's something we've talked about. That's something we've seen. And
Yeah.
that's something that just at a bare minimum is going to put those guys in a better position to be successful. Are they going to be perfect? Probably not. But are they going to be average? I think they are capable of being average, and that'll win you games in the NFL.
For sure. And like the question used the word creative, and I think in some people's mind it's gonna be like, oh, they're gonna run jet sweeps and reverses and reverse passes and halfback passes, and Sam's gonna tuck the ball under his jersey and run around like he's got a baby. Like what? I don't know what people think is gonna happen with this offense, but it's just like what modern NFL offense is now.
Just
of
good
like,
offenses, yeah.
Yeah, like there's going to be more play action. There's going to be more boot. You're going to see a fake that actually looks like a run play that they run, as opposed to last year where the play actions and the run plays were different actions. And it's like, if you're a smart enough defensive player, you can probably figure out that it's play action because they don't actually run that run play.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that is not really that creative. It's just modernizing to the intelligence of modern NFL defenses and using some of what they do against them. And it's really not that, like, it's not that complicated. It is hard to,
it's really hard
to call that and like do it well. It is much easier to sit here and conceptualize behind a microphone, but the concept ain't that hard. And it doesn't require some like genius level of creativity. What it does require, and where I think Eric is very well suited, is attention to detail on the practice field and the meeting room in terms of teaching the execution, and then a discipline in calling it. That 100%. Is going to be the question with him that we just don't know yet, because Andy was calling the plays in Kansas City. But if he has that discipline to continue to keep that variety on a good mix and a feel for it, then I think that's the answer to the question.
Yeah, I think, I'm glad you said discipline there, because that's really what it is. It's just like, how sharp can you be for 60 plays as a play caller? Can you stay out of third and long? Can you manage defensive expectations with your play calls? And I think, like you said, that's really what it boils down to. It's really hard to do. It's very, very hard to do. And that's why there's only a couple of really good coordinators in the league, Andy Reid being one of them. Hopefully Eric Bieniemy falls into that category soon. But I think that's a great way to put it. It's just a consistent approach, incorporating a variety of ideas down in and down out that subvert defensive expectations. There's nothing magical about it. It's just hard work, feel, and getting that executed. So I think that's a great way to articulate that.
All right, last one kind of on the quarterback offensive line section here, and then we'll get to some fun, very random questions. Alex says Washington's training camp quarterback or QB1 has been brand new to Ashburn 4 times in the last 5 years. So Howell, in his second straight year with the team, actually provides more continuity than we're used to lately. Will that small amount of QB consistency be important in the coming season?
I misread that question the first time because he did acknowledge that it was like a less than ideal situation. It's like a small
Yeah,
amount of continuity, right?
small amount.
And I think yes, I think yes, because one of
It's
the
better
things
than
about
none.
it's better than it is better than none. Because one of the things that sticks out to me is that like that relationship with the receivers, the offensive line, and the guys in the room helps with leadership stuff. It's like, hey man, like, oh, I like Sam. I know Sam. I can have lunch with Sam. I can approach Sam, as opposed to somebody new coming in and being like, I don't know this guy. I got to build that relationship. I got to understand how he likes to communicate. It does kind of hamper communication and that kind of stuff. So I think that is beneficial. But in terms of, you know, like big picture, like high level stuff in terms of what was the word he used? Continuity.
Yeah.
Um, there's not a lot of continuity for Sam. It's an entirely new offense. There's a lot of new people on the staff. Like it's basically like he almost came in day one when Eric Bieniemy became the coach here, almost,
Yeah.
and that's not his fault. That's just how it goes. But it is a very small amount of continuity. I think it's important to understand that there is a contribution to it, but um, it's not like this. Wow, he's been in the offense for 4 years type of thing.
Right. There is continuity with personnel sometimes, though, where like, or a quarterback might understand a receiver's body language. He's
Yeah,
about to break when and things like
yeah.
that. The problem is Sam didn't really practice that much with the guys he's throwing to now. Like he didn't get a lot of reps with Terry McLaurin last year because Sam was the third string and Terry was the starter. And so outside of Diami, who most of those reps came in college anyway, there's not a lot of continuity even on that level. So yes, from a human perspective, there is continuity, and that's great.
That
The
is great.
ability to sit at the lunch table to understand how guys tick a little bit. The relationship is different when you're the starter for sure, but there's a human connection that is important and is already built. However, from a football perspective, both on the field and within the offense, scheme wise and personnel wise, there's next to nothing. There is
Yeah.
nothing on the scheme side because Bieniemy is bringing in stuff that's brand new, and he might as well be coming from college into this offense. It's just one offense to the next. Whether it was a pro or a college, there's no difference. And then personnel wise, again, he didn't practice with a lot of these guys last year, so that's the answer to that.
Well, and also you bring up a good point though. Like it's not like he's starting from college because he has seen NFL defenses. He has seen a week's prep. Like there are
Sure.
things that are helpful, like from a professionalism and interpersonal relationship standpoint. But and he can apply that now.
But that's second year stuff, not necessarily like
Yes,
continuity
yes,
stuff.
correct. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you're watching or listening right now so you don't miss an episode, including our chat with Jordan Rodrigue later this week on her new podcast series, The Playcallers. All right, Logan, very random questions now. Just out of left field, fun. Some of them have absolutely nothing to do with football. Some of them have to do with multiple footballs, if you will. I'm gonna start
Yeah,
with
no,
one that I just saw. This wasn't submitted to our mailbag, but I just saw this tweet and I thought it was a fun thing to chop up. Pat, there's an aerial photo of Patrick Mahomes' new house that is circulating the internet. It
okay,
is a gigantic home. There's like a mini football field out in the backyard.
good for him. Yep.
He's got like a golf hole built on his property. It looks like it's like a full size kind of deal. Just one hole, but like full size. So if you're building your dream house, what one or two like absurd things do you want? Do you want the giant movie theater? Do you want a basketball court? Do you want a football field? Like what do you want?
So my answer is probably going to be different than a lot of people. So you could probably answer for me, but I'm going to answer for if I'm building a house, right? One of the things that I've learned, I've been married a long time, been with the same woman now for like 21 years, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah,
But
you
you
guys
can
started
see
dating in
these.
like high school, right?
Yeah, yeah, since I was 15. So yeah, 21 years with the same girl. So happy wife, happy life. I live by that. You can see these bridles here in the background. My wife's really
Yep.
into horses. So I definitely, if I'm making my own house, we are going somewhere where there's a ton of land. She can have as many horses as she wants. She can rescue as many dogs as she wants. And that would just make her the happiest person on earth. For me, I think, and then for my kids, I'd like a spot for them to like hit the go-karts and, go
Yeah.
paintballing out in the woods and go crazy. But for me, I'd like, I want a weight room. I want a nice
I knew that was
weight
going to be your
room.
answer.
I want like nice stuff in there. I want like if budget's no option, I want, like the Rogue Rack. I want the eccentric, overload machines. I want plyometrics. I don't even really like Vertimex, but I'm going to buy a Vertimex in there, jump pad. I'm going to, whatever I can think of, it's going to be there, and that's what I'm going to make happen.
Logan's
So
going to get up and do force plate testing every day.
yeah, I'm going to I want that kind of stuff. I want to like have it on my thing, like I want it to be synced with my ring and then just data, out the wazoo, and probably a personal chef. That would be the other thing that I would be
Oh, that's
pretty
good.
fired. I would be like, yo, you go shopping, cook. This is what I want my ratios to be, make it taste good, and we're eating. That's what I would do probably. So
That's nice. That's nice.
how
Yeah,
about you?
no.
What you got?
Actually, my wife needs to talk to your wife about the horses thing because she rode when she was younger, and
Oh, really?
yeah, that's like actually a conversation off air that we need to have. So
Oh,
the
yeah, for
horses
sure.
thing would definitely be good on that front. I've always wanted a basketball court. Like I've always
Like
wanted
in the house or like
Yeah.
outside?
No. Like indoor with
Those
the
are cool.
wood. Like with like the hardwood. Like I want it. I don't know. I'll come up with a logo for myself if I'm
Yeah,
that
like the
um
oh gosh, I went on a
if I'm that successful.
I went with somebody on a house. Like I couldn't buy this house. I went with one of my friends. I forget who it was, and they were looking at houses with indoor basketball courts, and I was like, "This would be awesome!" Like they had the rack of balls all lined up. It was the
Yep.
person's name, and they were talking about switching the logo and the colors, and it had like this
Scoreboard.
cool, yeah, like cool natural lighting. It was like I was like, "This is sick." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like in a dungeon. They had like these nice windows and it like walked out to the pool and I was like
Yes.
if I'm living my life like I mean if budget's no option, man, gym and basketball court, let's make it happen, maybe a
Right.
batting cage in there, let's just go
Well,
crazy.
that's why I was like, let's pick one. Because like, yeah, I want my own IMG academy. That would
yeah,
be
like
cool, but
I want my own personal strength coach to live with me and then train me. Like that. I want all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I think the indoor basketball court has like a really cool when it's done nice. I don't want like a dungeon indoor basketball court, but one that's like to your point, like like I got like a nice view. That would be sick. I think that would be pretty cool.
yeah, that would just be I miss being able to play. And like part of that is you don't have like it's hard to find a good indoor gym. And
Yeah.
so if you have one in your house, you can go get shots up whenever you want. Like you can host the pickup
Are you
game.
playing basketball like that?
I would love to. I have not played pickup in so long. I used to play when I lived in
But the
Reston.
problem when it's in your house though, bro, is that you need people to come. You know what I mean? Like
Well, that's what I'm saying is like I would have to go somewhere. So why don't I just make them come to me?
Do you have enough friends to play pickup basketball like that?
You could find people. I mean, you need 9 others. You really need like 12 for
Yeah.
good. That way you got one sub rotated.
Yeah, no one's super
rotated in.
gassed. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we could. I mean, between my friends who play and like their friends, like we could make it happen.
Yeah. And that would be
Yeah.
pretty sick because then you'd go to you'd play, you go out to your pool and go watch a movie afterwards, have your personal chef.
Right.
That is living right there, bro. You just
Yeah.
are, oh gosh, I wonder how much that would cost. But this is
I
all
don't know.
pretend. This is all hypothetical.
It also depends on where it is. Where is this land? Because if it's anywhere around here, it's a lot. Like for a night for a nice decent house. We spent a little bit too much time on Redfin and Zillow lately, and yikes, bro! Inside the Beltway is not a pretty scene.
not a spot to be.
No. All right. Now we got. If that wasn't random enough, favorite restaurant in the DMV.
Yeah, I don't even. I'm lame, Craig. So I'll let you like I go out a fair amount, but I'm going to like fast stuff. It's like Kava or Chipotle or
Yeah.
where
You
the
also got
macros.
kids, which is a game changer.
It's a game changer. I will say there was an Italian restaurant in Georgetown,
There's a bunch of them. Yeah.
but it was like Mama G's or something like that, where they have like this Italian woman that makes pastas in the front window, like it's a display. And that was some of the best Italian food I've ever had. And last time I was there was before kids, but that spot was pretty amazing. So I would say that was like just as a spot that kind of stuck out to me as like a really unique dining experience with really good food, really cool ambiance. That'd be one. I can't even remember the name of it, but that would be what I'd say.
So also price point is obviously a big factor here. If it's like the once every 6 month category versus
where are you going?
Once a year, like Sushi Nakazawa was one of the best meals I've ever had in my life. That is also the most I've ever put down. Now some of it friends were like Venmoing back that we were with, but like that was the most money I've ever put my credit card
money
down.
was it? How much was it?
I think that. So I'll tell the backstory here. My cousin is an accountant, like a corporate tax accountant, and he and his girlfriend and me and Rachel went out with him because he did our taxes. So like he every year treats himself to like a really nice sushi after busy season. We're like, we'll go with you. We'll get yours because you did our taxes, and we went for it, and that was a $1,400 dinner for the four of us.
$1,400, okay.
Which, like, considering like for an NFL, like that's nothing. Like there are guys that like that's a Tuesday for them. You get the nice bottle of wine, but like for me, that was a hefty bill.
I will say that's a nice. You got to kind of take out some payments on that. You know what I mean? Like that's a good.
Yeah.
That's
we got some of that back, but I was like, whew, buddy.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever spent that much money on a meal personally. I've been to meals where more has been spent, but that was one of the.
We're not big drinkers though, so like it's hard for us to spend like insane, but like our more frequent, like not nearly as bad, kind of my go-to answer for best restaurant / favorite in the DMV is Little Pearl. Now there's it's tasting menu, like prefix kind of deal, but it's not outrageously priced. They're saying is, oh God, it's something but not fancy. I'm hoping Rachel can hear me through the walls and will text me what the saying is. But like it's just delicious and fancy but not formal. Thank you. Fancy but not formal. And so it's like elevated cuisine and the expensive version of this meal is like Pineapple and Pearl and Rose's Luxury. It's the same restaurant group.
Oh, okay.
But Little Pearl is always a favorite for us. We've done like, birthday dinners and, when we got engaged that weekend, we went to Little Pearl. So it's a sentimental value as well.
Yeah, that's great. You got engaged there, you said?
No, after we got engaged.
I got you.
The next day we went. We actually met the Gorases there, which was great.
Oh, that's very nice.
Last one, unless you have any of the other fun ones that you wanted to throw out.
No, you got all the fun ones.
But someone asked me, what do you think is the best comparison for Washington for an English football team? Now, this is not your area of, despite the fact that one of us played high school soccer and it wasn't me.
Yeah, I think I've told you this before. I had an offer to play Division I soccer, which is crazy to think about now because I'm like fat and like I couldn't run more than like 25 feet. But back in the day, I was pretty good at soccer.
Yeah, different body type. You conform to NFL tight end quite well.
That is true. Yeah.
But which English Premier League team, which English football team, do you think is the best comparison for the Washington Commanders? So I pulled up the list of.
Because it'd have to be someone who was good like 15 years ago that is no longer that good. And, maybe on the uptick, I don't know, but that's kind of what was my criteria when you mentioned that.
Right.
Obviously.
And that's kind of what I was looking for. And I actually it's not a perfect comparison, both in terms of they've been successful too recently.
Right.
And they're also historically far better than Washington, not to diminish 3 Super Bowl championships and some other, championships in the pre-Super Bowl era.
It's all relative.
Manchester United was the best team for a long time, including some of the same stretches where they won in 92, 93, 94, 96, 97. And then kind of through that era, through the mid 2000s, honestly, 09, they won in 2011, 2013. They won the league. And so they're probably overly successful, but they also haven't been terrible in the last decade. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing about Washington is they've been sneakily mediocre.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And so that's one that comes to mind. If you want to go maybe a little bit too far the other direction, an Everton's a good one.
Why?
An incredibly proud club with a long history of winning a fairly long time ago that they almost they've never been relegated, but they skated through this year. Like they were the last team that did not get relegated this year. Their fans are still loyal as hell and also have been through an immense amount of sadness. They hate their current ownership. Although that's, obviously about to change here in Washington. That can also be said, by the way, for Manchester United. Part of the change was the Glazers, actually, the family that owns the Bucks, bought Manchester United, and they have not been nearly as good since. So that is somewhere between Manchester United and Everton, which I realize is like kind of the entire scope of the Premier League. But I feel like there's facets of both. I need my guy Roger Bennett to come on in from Men in Blazers. He'd have a great answer to this. He, by the way, is an Everton fan.
Oh, well, I think both those sound reasonable, and I'm sure like you can draw comparisons to all those. But yeah, that sounds about right. I remember, Manchester United being awesome. They're not good anymore.
Yeah, I mean they're good. They're actually kind of finally swinging back up, but they are not top of the league.
Well, maybe that's where Washington's going, swinging back up.
Right. I'm just waiting for someone to tweet like, "Oh no, it's Blackburn Rovers, you big wanker." Can I say that on this show? I don't know.
Nick, if you can. Maybe bleep it, but that's okay. You should also bleep the entire accent portion of that because it's not good. But you keep doing it, so it's kind of a fun bit now. Yeah, that was better. That was better than most of your accents, though.
It depends on whether I'm trying. I feel like I have some good accents. Maybe that's a different show for a different July.
Could you imagine? Like next show, tune in. Last segment, Craig does accents.
Yeah,
I love it. That's good radio.
Like do a show fully in an Australian accent. German?
All right.
I don't know. Okay.
I don't know. It's tough. Well, we could maybe do this. If you want to see Craig do accents,
no, you don't.
Leave them in the comments. And we'll just have a segment, 5 minutes. Craig does accents. We'll think of a better title.
I just imagine the higher ups looking at the graph of like episode listens and be like, "What happened on that one? That's nobody liked that one. Oh, that was the one Craig did completely talking like a German." All right, when we get back on our next episode, we will have this no accents, just straight incredible football conversation.
Yeah, nerdy football talk.
Jordan Rodrigue did a series called The Playcallers for The Athletic. We will talk to her about that. So make sure you're subscribed so that hits your feed as soon as the episode goes live. Of course, for full podcast episodes on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/@1067fan to watch. Make sure you're subscribed there. The radio shows on the Team 980's YouTube page every day from 4 to 7. So subscribe there. And I got clips of both at youtube.com/@Craig Hoffman. All right, that's it. That's all for this edition of Take Command, and we'll see you later in the week. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.